grounding. The difficult part is to convince yourself that yes, I can move from a salaried job, which I've done all my life, into something that is business on its own, etc. I know that if I put my head to it and I put my efforts behind it, there's a more than 50% chance of succeeding.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
Across the world, social media is aggravating the drug menace. Find out why Africa is one of the worst affected continents. Picturesque Umhlanga Rocks coastline in South Africa is harboring a deadly unseen enemy that's threatening lives and health. And South Africa's musical siblings are making a mark on the global stage. This week on World of Africa at these times.
Good morning, Asia, and good evening, America. This is World DNA, and I'm Aditi Singh.
And I'm Hem Kaursara, and on the show today, in retaliation of the continued Houthi threat in the Red Sea, UK and the United States forces have launched air, ship and submarine strikes against Yemen's Houthi fighters. We'll get you the latest on this on the show today.
Yes, and also on the show, we will get you all the key takeaways from the first day of the ICJ genocide hearing brought on by South Africa against Israel. All that and more over the course of the next 60 minutes. Let's start by looking at the headlines first.
US and UK launched strikes against Yemen's Houthi rebels across the country, including capital Sana'a. Houthis termed the move American Zionist British aggression.
Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu alleges hypocrisy and lies being presented to UN's top court, says South Africa's genocide accusation could only happen in a world turned upside down.
Pentagon Inspector General says it will investigate the handling of Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's secretive hospital visit last week.
Former US President Donald Trump accuses New York judge overseeing his civil fraud trial of bias and having personal agenda.
The UNSC confirms death of UN-designated terrorist Hafiz Abdul Salam Bhutawi, responsible for training 2611 Mumbai attackers in Pakistan prison while serving terror financing sentence.
And record 19-time champions Barcelona beat Osasuna to set up a Spanish Super Cup final with La Liga leaders Real Madrid.
Now to begin with, as tensions continue to flare in the Red Sea, the United States and the UK have now launched their first strikes against Houthi-linked targets across Yemen.
Yes, and as per US President Joe Biden, the strikes are backed by Australia, Canada, Bahrain and the Netherlands. And the retaliation comes just days after the navies of the two countries thwarted the biggest Houthi attack in the Red Sea till date.
Now, this is the first attack against the Iran-backed rebels since their aggression against shipping vessels began last year. The strikes have reportedly been carried out by aircraft, ship and submarines. As per reports, the Western militaries are targeting drone and missile launch sites along with radar stations and weapons stockpiles in Yemen's coastal areas. The counteroffensive aims to halt the Houthi missile and drone assault in the vital shipping route.
And meanwhile, the Houthis have confirmed the Western raids struck targets in the capital Sana'a along with the cities of Sada and Tamar as well as Hodeidah. Now, the militant group has termed the strike, and I'm quoting here, an American Zionist British aggression.
On the other hand, US President has issued a statement following the strikes, which reads, and I'm quoting here, "Today, at my direction, US military forces, together with the United Kingdom and with support from Australia, Bahrain, Canada and the Netherlands, successfully conducted strikes against a number of targets in Yemen used by Houthi rebels to endanger freedom of navigation in one of the world's most vital waterways."
A joint statement from the government of Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Denmark, Germany, Netherlands, New Zealand, Republic of Korea, United Kingdom and the United States has also been released. And the countries say that they will not hesitate to defend lives and protect the free flow of commerce in the critical waterways in the face of continued threat.
Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken also spoke with India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, welcoming increased cooperation with India to defend the freedom of navigation in the region.
And the Houthis, who control most of Yemen, have been targeting commercial vessels in the Red Sea to show their support for Hamas and following the outbreak of its war with Israel. And these attacks have disrupted international commerce, most importantly on the route between Europe and Asia, which accounts for over 15% of the world's shipping traffic.
Now, for more details on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report. Listen to this.
The airstrikes launched by the United States and UK against the Houthis in Yemen on Thursday come just one day after the United Nations Security Council here in New York passed a resolution condemning the Houthis and also calling them to stop their attacks on ships in the Red Sea. Jake Sullivan, U.S. National Security Advisor, celebrated the resolution and condemned those attacked by Houthis. The resolution was sponsored by Japan and the United States, and while several countries abstained, it's not yet clear how this would affect the Houthis moving forward, considering the fact that they're not an official country and the United Nations Security Council resolutions would not really affect them, or would they even listen to something like that? Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is What.
Now, to discuss this further, we're being joined live by Glenn Carley, who is a former national intelligence officer from the CIA and also an expert of national security and foreign policy. So thank you so much for joining us on World DNA.
Thank you.
Now, sir, I want to start by asking you, we've seen how tense the situation has been in the Red Sea. Since the beginning of this war, there have been fears of a regional conflagration, and we are seeing that playing out in the Red Sea. Now, in a retaliatory attack against Yemen's Houthis, the United States and UK, they have carried out strikes against them. These are ripple effects, of course, of the war. How do you see the situation unfolding here?
Well, I see the situation in the Red Sea as the second most significant and dangerous development of the last year and a half, actually. I'm alarmed. The first one was not what we all immediately would think of in the current circumstances, the October 7 attack by Hamas, but rather Russia's attack of Ukraine. Because what has happened is the Hamas attack in particular, followed on the war in Ukraine, has brought Iran, Russia, and China closer together, and in fact is creating this sphere of influence world as opposed to the theoretical but also real normative system of the West and the United Nations that the strikes by the United States are intended to maintain. So I think this is an extension, or rather an expansion, that is quite alarming. How it will play out, I don't know, but it's a dangerous moment.
And Mr. Ghale, how do you assess this situation in terms of the consequences? Now, this route accounts for 15% of the world's traffic. How will this impact the international commercial activity?
Well, the impact, as you pointed out, and as we've discussed in previous conversations, has already been real. I think the figure that I recall is that insurance rates have increased 40% or some such thing as that. And Lloyd's, one of the two main insurers of large container ships, has, I believe, said that it will, for the time being, no longer insure ships passing through the Red Sea. Many ships have been diverted. Attacks are a threat, even if they have been parried so far. So the consequences already are quite significant. And this seems to be playing Tehran's game, really, of creating problems for the United States' presence in the entire region and threatening the normative world order. So this is, to me, a very significant event.
Yes, and Mr. Ghale, as the situation on ground in Gaza worsens, now, do you think that the involvement now of UK and the US will have bring any kind of hope when it comes to peace negotiations or the war to a halt?
In Gaza, you mean?
Yes.
Well, I think the only way, so long as Netanyahu and the far right of the Likud party and other far right parties are running Israel, the prospects are very dim. Netanyahu has made a good part of his career boasting over how he manipulates and or ignores the United States when it suits his purposes. He boasts about having undermined the Oslo Accords and the possibility, the reality that was at hand, of a two-state solution for the Palestinian-Israeli crisis. So long as he is in power, the policy seems to be a maximalist and just pursuing punishment, really. Unless the United States brings substantial pressure on Israel for the immediate future, the coming weeks, I don't see a happy change in prospect.
Well, thanks for joining in, Mr. Ghale, on that note, and thanks for your time and all those insights. I really appreciate you joining us.
Anytime. My pleasure.
Now, meanwhile, in high-stakes legal battle, the ICJ began the proceedings against Israel. Haim has all the details, and over to you, Haim.
Well, thank you so much, Aditi. Of course, as the United States and its allies target Houthi installations inside Yemen, a high-stakes legal battle is brewing in the United Nations. This as South Africa accused Israel of genocide in Gaza. Amidst global protests, both sides remain entrenched, further highlighting the conflict's complexity and urgency for de-escalation. I will break this down for you and what happened on day one of the hearing. Now, South Africa, it's formally accused Israel of committing genocide against Palestinians. Pretoria argues that Israel aims to destroy the Palestinian population in Gaza. They allege Israel is in violation of the 1948 Genocide Convention, which both countries are signatories to. South Africa is also seeking preliminary orders to compel Israel to stop its military campaign in Gaza. Now, let me tell you the genocidal actions listed by South Africa in their legal suit. The killing of Palestinians in Gaza in large numbers, especially children. Destruction of their homes. Their expulsion and displacement. Blockade of food, water and medical assistance. Now, the imposition of measures preventing Palestinian births by destroying essential health services crucial for the survival of pregnant women and babies. These are all listed as genocidal actions in the suit. On the other hand, Israel has issued a statement countering South Africa's allegations of genocide. Meanwhile, Israeli lawyers are due to address the court later today. Israel has fiercely rejected South Africa's claim. Its military says they take a raft of measures to avoid civilian casualties. These have included airdropping flyers warning of imminent attacks, calling civilians' phones to urge them to leave targeted buildings, aborting some strikes when civilians are in the way, and the Israeli government has repeatedly stated its intention is to destroy Hamas, not the Palestinian people. Now let's listen to what the Israeli officials and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had to say about the genocidal accusations put forward by South Africa.
The October 7 massacre is a genocidal act. That's under any international law, and we can talk more about it later. And what South Africa did on October 8th is blame Israel for what happened on October 7th. So what they're saying today is a huge lie. And they're saying that they are not representing Hamas, but you actually, when they open their mouth, you can hear Hamas talking.
What a twisted world. And it is the IDF, the most moral army in the world, which does everything to avoid harming the uninvolved, that is accused by the representatives of the monsters of genocide. The hypocrisy of South Africa knows no bounds. Where was South Africa when millions of people were murdered and displaced from their homes in Syria and Yemen? And by whom? By the partners of Hamas. A twisted world. Where have you been?
Now let's also try and understand when we can expect a decision on the case brought by South Africa. Now the ICJ could rule quickly on South Africa's request for Israel to suspend its military campaign. This would, in theory, protect the Palestinians from what might ultimately be declared genocide. But a final ruling on whether Israel is committing genocide could take several years. These proceedings usually do take several years. That's all that we know for now. Over to you, Aditi.
Thanks, Aim, for that report. And now moving on to more news. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is facing mounting criticism over silence on his health. And the Pentagon Inspector General's office said that it will investigate Austin's failure to report his hospitalization to the rest of the government. 70-year-old Austin has been hospitalized since January 1st, and it's a fact that the Pentagon had kept from the public, the White House and Congress for much of the last week, triggering a major political backlash. And this situation is a major headache for Biden in an election year. It has put the president on the defensive and providing an opening for attacks by Republicans who are painting him as too old to manage the job. Now, the probe will also assess whether Defense Department policies and procedures are sufficient to ensure timely and appropriate notifications and the effective transition of authorities. Austin underwent minor surgery to treat the cancer on December 22nd and returning home the following day, but was readmitted due to complications including nausea and severe pain on January 1st. Now, this comes at a time when Washington's forces are frequently under fire in Iraq and Syria, and Yemeni rebels are attacking international shipping in the Red Sea. And Republican lawmakers have called for Austin's resignation. Austin is also the latest Biden administration official, and they are targeting in a bid to hammer the Democrats ahead of November's election. Various Democrats have also expressed concern, but only one member of Biden's party has called for the defense secretary to leave the office.
May God continue to bless. And the things that we're doing right now.
And staying with news from the United States, in a dramatic conclusion to his civil fraud trial, Donald Trump accused the New York judge, Justice Arthur Engoron, of quote-unquote having your own agenda.
Yes, and in response, Engoron didn't mince words at all, asking Trump's lawyer to control his client.
We consider this an unconstitutional witch hunt. It's election interference at the highest level. It's a disgrace. It's in coordination with the White House and Joe Biden because he can't win a campaign fairly. And we're going through it, but it is indeed a terrible witch hunt. At this moment, the judge is not letting me make the summation because I'll bring up things that he doesn't want to hear.
The months-long case, which could impact the former U.S. president's business empire, reached its climax as Trump clashed with the judge. On the last hearing of the trial in Manhattan, Trump yet again denied any wrongdoing and repeated claims of political persecution. The trial, which will decide the penalties after finding Trump's company inflated his net worth, is running without a jury, a ruling that is expected by the 31st of January.
Now, Trump's legal team and New York Attorney General Letitia James delivered closing arguments, and James seeks nearly $370 million and a lifetime real estate industry ban on Trump. Her lawyer claimed Trump's company issued false financial statements from 2011 to 2021, and even the attorney for the state said that Trump's financial statements before he became president clearly showed that he was responsible for their contents.
On the other hand, Trump, who continued to maintain innocence, faced skepticism from the judge. The judge questioned the argument that Trump should escape penalties because lenders and insurers turned a profit. Trump, however, has denied the argument, stating that there was no evidence of harm.
Now, the former U.S. president and his two eldest sons are accused of inflating the value of their real estate assets, and this in order to receive more favorable bank loans and insurance terms. Trump is currently facing 4 potential criminal trials. He has already been charged in Washington and Georgia for attempts to overturn his 2020 election.
Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was in Estonia as part of his 2-day visit to the Baltic states.
Yes, and this trip was aimed to stop a war fatigue among Ukraine's Western allies and secure more financial and military aid for the country. The president also discussed Kyiv's bids to join NATO and the European Union. In Estonia, Zelensky addressed the lawmakers of its parliament. He thanked them for supporting Ukraine in its war against Russia and also called to defeat the tyrant, referring to Russia.
Tyranny must be defeated. Tyranny must always be a loser. Always, always, always. This must be left after us as our main political heritage. Us, all the countries that value independence, all the nations that don't want their children to be a property of dictators, all the leaders who strive to be on the right side of the history.
Now, he held talks with the Estonian Prime Minister, Kaja Kallas, who discussed the Russian aggression. He underlined that any pause in the ongoing conflict will only help Russia crush Ukraine. Zelensky, however, reiterated Kyiv's credentials for a NATO membership. He argued that its army will only strengthen the NATO flank and also help East European countries. Since the war, Ukraine has expressed frustration towards its Western allies for lack of a time frame to join the bloc.
And during the talk, Zelensky raised questions on Ukrainians on service age living abroad and not making any contributions to help Kyiv in the war.
But if you are abroad and you are of mobilization age and you are not at the front and you do not pay taxes and you left illegally, then there are questions. That's all. In principle, the position is, if we want to save Ukraine, if we want to save Europe, then we must understand, either we help Ukraine or not.
Zelensky is currently in Latvia for the last leg of his Baltic visit. He was welcomed by President Edgars Rinkēvičs in capital city of Riga. On Wednesday, Zelensky visited Lithuania as part of his Baltic visit. The country's officials approved a package of long-term military assistance to Ukraine worth $220 million. The aid will include ammunition, generators, detonation systems that will be delivered in January. Ukraine will also get the M577 armoured personnel carriers in February as part of this aid package. While in Lithuania, Zelensky said that the country is not facing any pressure from its allies to stop the war.
Well, the comments came after Italian defense minister said that the time has now come for diplomacy to pave the way for peace in Ukraine. And in the latest that's coming in from the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev has warned of a potential nuclear attack on Ukraine.
And in a stern warning, he issued that any Ukrainian attacks on missile launch sites within Russia using weapons supplied by the United States can provoke such an attack.
Medvedev is currently serving as the deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, and he has raised serious concerns about some Ukrainian military commanders contemplating these strikes on Russian sites. Now, however, he refrained from naming the commanders or providing any extra details about the alleged plan. The former Russian president also highlighted pointers from Russia's state policy specifying the conditions under which a Russian president might consider employing nuclear weapons.
Despite the gravity of this warning, there has been no immediate reaction from Ukraine. However, it is important to note that the risk of nuclear escalation has loomed over the ongoing war. Critics, however, have viewed this statement as an attempt to dissuade the West from providing further support to Ukraine. This is because the United States and its allies have pledged nearly $250 billion in military and other assistance to Kyiv.
And the global implications are also quite significant, considering that Russia and the United States possess the largest nuclear arsenals in the world. According to the Federation of American Scientists, President Vladimir Putin controls almost 6,000 nuclear warheads, while the US, on the other hand, commands about around 5,200 nuclear warheads.
And with that, it's time now for a short break.
But don't go anywhere, because on the other side of World DNA, we will bring you the biggest updates from all around the globe.
Pakistani terrorist and 26/11 attacks mastermind Abdul Salam Batawi dies in jail. Batawi, a UN-designated terrorist, trained the attackers of terror outfit Lashkar-e-Toiba for 2008's Mumbai terror attacks. We will get you all the details on the other side.
And some top developments from the world of technology. Google will shut down websites created with its Google business profiles in March. All this coming after a short break. Stay tuned.
Tiny island, but massive stakes. As Taiwan goes to polls, all eyes on the dragon in the room.
两岸同胞要携手同心，共享民族复兴的。
Big stakes here in Taiwan as an election helps determine the future of this democratic island.
台湾人的共同的意志来做这个决定啊。那毕竟我们是一个民主的国家。
The Taiwanese foreign minister warns that Beijing may use these elections as a testing ground and apply the tactics on other nations.
A vote that will resonate in American corridors of power.
Will the new government reopen dialogues with China based on equality and mutual respect?
India keeps a keen eye, cautious on China's Indo-Pacific hegemony.
WION decodes what the presidential polls mean for Taiwan and what these polls mean for the world. WION's continuous coverage.
मुझे तो अभी तक अपना नाम नहीं बताया।
Ayo, sorry, my name is.
As the Indian film Merry Christmas hits screens, we tell you some rare facts about its lead star, Katrina Kaif.
Ayo, namaskar.
Watch as we decode the Mean Girls legacy and find out all about the upcoming music tours in 2024. With me, Alison Lagrange, on WION The Club at these times.
This week on West Asia Post, Israel goes to trial at International Court of Justice on charges of committing genocide in Gaza. Yemen's Houthis carry out the biggest Red Sea attack yet. In the backdrop of war, West Asia sees the resurgence of the Islamic State. Also on the show, we bring you the story of Gaza's journalists. This Friday, 5:30 p.m. IST, 12 noon GMT, only on WION. World is One.
Finance, which provides funds to micro enterprises, which are the excluded segment in the country. I was brought up in a small town like Baltic, which gave me the small town grounding. The difficult part is to convince yourself that yes, I can move from a salaried job, which I've done all my life, into something that is business on its own, etc. I know that if I put my head to it and I put my efforts behind it, there's a more than 50% chance of succeeding.
Welcome back to World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us. So far on the show, we've covered how the United States and the UK have carried out the first targeted strikes against Yemeni targets. This in retaliation to the tense situation in the Red Sea. We will, of course, continue to bring you all the developments on that front as and when it comes in.
But before we get deeper into that and more global news from around the world, let's take a quick look at the top headlines.
UNSC confirms death of UN-designated terrorist Hafiz Abdul Salam Bhutawi, responsible for training 2611 Mumbai attackers in Pakistan prison while serving terror financing sentence.
US and UK launched strikes against Yemen's Houthi rebels across the country, including capital Sana'a, and Houthis termed this move American Zionist British aggression.
Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu alleges hypocrisy and lies being presented to UN's top court, says South Africa's genocide accusation could only happen in a world turned upside down.
Pentagon Inspector General says it will investigate handling of Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's secretive hospital visit last week.
Former US President Donald Trump accuses New York judge overseeing his civil fraud trial of bias and having personal agenda.
An all-rounder Shivam Dube scores 50 as India beat Afghanistan by 6 wickets in the opening T20 to take a 1-0 lead in the 3-match series.
40 in front of what has to be said, a brave and fantastic crowd.
Now, the United Nations Security Council has confirmed that one of the founding members of terrorist outfit Lashkar-e-Toiba and the deputy of the 26/11 attacks mastermind, Hafiz Syed Abdul Salam Bhutawi, is dead.
A UN-designated terrorist, Bhutawi trained the Lashkar-e-Toiba attackers for the 2008 Mumbai terror attack and acted as the outfit's chief on at least 2 occasions when Hafiz Syed was detained.
Now, according to the UNSC, Bhutawi died of cardiac arrest in Punjab province on the 29th of May last year while he was in custody of the government of Pakistan. Bhutawi was first listed on the UNSC wanted list in 2012 as being associated with Al-Qaeda. In May last year, there were reports of the terrorist's death. However, there was no clarity. But this is the first time a legitimate body has updated its record and has confirmed his death. Bhutawi was serving a sentence for terror financing in the Pakistan jail.
As per the UNSC, Bhutawi served as the acting emir of Jamaat-Ottawa on at least 2 occasions when Hafiz Syed was detained after the Mumbai attacks. Bhutawi handled the group's day-to-day functions during this period and made independent decisions on behalf of the organization. He also helped prepare the terrorists on the 26/11 Mumbai attack by delivering lectures. And the attack killed over 150 people and injured many more. Another senior judge has resigned from Pakistan's Supreme Court. Ijaz ul Hasan, a senior judge in Pakistan, resigned a day after Justice quit office.
Now, Justice Ehsan sent his written resignation to the President, Dr. Arif Alvi. The text has not been revealed yet. Justice Ijaz ul Hasan earlier opposed the proceedings against Justice Mazahir Ali Naqvi and did not attend the Supreme Judicial Council meeting.
Now, Justice Ijaz ul Hasan, the third most senior judge on the Supreme Court, was notably absent from today's meeting of the Supreme Court Judicial Council. And Justice Hasan was considered the leading candidate for the role of Chief Justice of the Supreme Court due to his seniority in October 2024.
And now, with Chief Justice Qazi Faiz Isa's anticipated retirement on the 25th of October 2024, Justice Mansoor Ali Shah is poised to step into the role of the Chief Justice, and this development marks significant changes in the leadership structure of the Pakistani Supreme Court. Let's shift our focus now. Just a couple of days before the people of Taiwan cast their vote, China has strongly opposed any official exchanges between the United States and Taiwan.
And yes, this comes after the Biden administration announced it will send an unofficial delegation to Taiwan shortly after the election. Washington has said a face-to-face meeting is the most effective way to engage the new Taiwanese government and convey U.S. policy in the region. But Beijing has now sent in a reminder that Taiwan is the first red line that cannot be crossed in China-U.S. relations.
China has consistently and firmly opposed any form of official exchange between the United States and Taiwan. The US should earnestly adhere to the One China principle, handle Taiwan-related issues prudently and properly, stop official exchanges with Taiwan, refrain from sending any wrong signals to the Taiwan independent separatist forces, and avoid any form of interference in the elections, so as to prevent serious damage to China-US relations and the peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait.
But the warnings are not one-sided. A senior Biden administration official said the United States opposes any outside interference or influence in Taiwan's elections.
And China continues to frame the vote as a decision between war and peace. Beijing said that the ruling party candidate Lai Ching's victory could pose a senior danger to peace. Taiwan's main opposition leader has also stepped right in to back this attack.
我相信大家很清楚认识。
I believe everyone understands very clearly that apart from the Democratic Progressive Party and Lai Ching-te himself is essentially a pragmatic worker for Taiwan's independence. Therefore, the risk of his election is much higher than anyone else's. Hence, in war, there cannot be any what-ifs. The risk of war must be reduced to zero. Peace is the only option.
战争的风险一定要降到零。 和平才是唯一的选项。
And more global news, El Salvador's government has carried out several raids inside its prisons.
And this measure comes after a wave of violence hit another Latin American country, Ecuador. The raids are a part of a territorial control plan of the government, and the plan was launched in 2019 by President Nayib Bukele. Guards inspected various prisons across the country. They checked the belongings of the inmates.
Now, Bukele says that the measure is to combat the gangs in the country, and under the plan, Bukele has empowered El Salvador's armed forces and has even built new prisons.
Now, several Latin American countries are battling the rising gang violence. Recently, in gut-wrenching scenes, gunmen wearing hoods stormed a live TV broadcast in Ecuador. They entered the studio firing guns and beating up the TV channel crews. All this happened after Ecuadorian President Daniel Noboa declared a state of emergency following a jailbreak by a criminal gang leader.
And after witnessing the violence in Ecuador, Peru launched a mega search operation. Peruvian guards also entered several prisons. Peru declared an emergency along its northern border with Ecuador. Peruvian Prime Minister Alberto Otarola announced soldiers would be sent to help Peruvian police there.
Moving on now, here's a look at all the developments from the world of technology now. Now, starting March 2024, Google will shut down websites created with its Google business profiles on its support page. Google mentioned that websites made with Google business profiles will be turned off. And the website visitors, in turn, will be redirected to the page's business profile, but only until the 10th of June this year. And after the deadline, the visitors will see a page not found error. These Google pages are basic tools offered by the tech giant for businesses and organizations to manage their online presence across Google. For a continued online presence, Google has advised businesses using their service to create a new website using other tools and to update their business profile. Domains ending in business.site and will be removed. Additionally, Google will permanently delete content in the important tab of the files in February, affecting devices in India holding critical documents.
Italy's Authority for Communications has rolled out strict regulations aimed at enhancing transparency in social media posts. And these regulations are mainly aimed at celebrities who have a large online following. And this move follows a scandal that involves Italian influencer Chiara. And for a misleading Christmas charity initiative, the rules initially apply to Italian influencers with over 1 million followers who choose to collaborate with Italian brands. According to the new rules, a failure to clearly label advertising content may result in fines up to 600,000 euros. And influencers are now mandated to adhere to a code of conduct emphasizing impartial communication and prohibiting fake news, discrimination or racism. And these regulations align with France's recent legislation to curb influencers' promotion of certain products and promote transparency in paid content. Now, the head of this clarified that these rules have developed over a year and were not specifically aimed at the influencer. Now, the Korea Trade Commission has announced a probe into alleged patent infringement involving a China-made smartphone battery. And the focus is on LG Chem Limited's material that's called NCM811, which contains nickel cobalt. And in these investigations, 3 Chinese firms and a local importer are under scrutiny.
A Japan-based entity has also made claims of battery patent infringement by an unnamed Chinese smartphone sold in South Korea. Additionally, anti-dumping investigation is launched into Chinese pet resins, which is commonly used in bottles and food packaging. And this investigation follows claims made by South Korea's TK Chemical Corporation. A preliminary ruling regarding the investigation is expected by June.
Now, the valuation war between tech titans took an interesting turn on Thursday when Microsoft briefly overtook Apple as the world's most valuable company for the first time since 2021.
And this came as the iPhone maker's shares began 2024 on a weak note amid growing demand concerns. Now, Microsoft's stock closed 0.5% higher, giving it a market valuation of $2.859 trillion. It rose as much as 2% during the session, and the company was briefly worth $2.903 trillion.
Now, shares of Apple closed 0.3% lower, giving the company a market cap of $2.886 trillion. Microsoft shares have risen sharply since last year, and thanks to the early lead the company has taken in generative AI via its billion-dollar investment in ChatGPT. Maker OpenAI Microsoft has incorporated OpenAI's technology across its suite of productivity software. Now, this boosted its cloud computing business in the July-September quarter.
Apple, meanwhile, has been grappling with weakening demand. Demand in China has slumped as the country's economy makes a slow recovery, while a resurgent Huawei chips away at its market share.
Shares of Apple have fallen 3.3% this month, while Microsoft shares have risen 1.8% in this same period.
Shares of Apple ended last year with a gain of 48%, but that was lower than the 57% rise posted by Microsoft. Now, the disruption in trade in the Red Sea is not just a headline that's grabbing attention of strategic planners.
Yes, it could have an impact on you, the consumer. Trade disruptions could affect profit margins of companies, and they could pass on that increase in its cost to you. So what's likely to get more expensive for you, the consumer? Well, take a look at this report to find out.
The recent spike in Houthi attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea poses significant challenges for global trade and has immediate repercussions for consumers and businesses alike. The strategic location of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, a crucial waterway between Europe and Asia connecting to the Suez Canal, makes it a hotspot for Houthi attacks, disrupting an estimated 12 to 15% of global trade. As a result of these attacks, major international shipping companies have deemed the security situation in the Red Sea too dangerous, leading to pauses in their transits through the waterway. The decision is expected to drive up prices for consumers in the coming weeks, impacting a wide range of products from Scottish whiskey to clothing from various countries that transit through the Suez Canal. The Red Sea disruption has broader implications beyond delayed shipments and increased costs. The region is a vital thoroughfare for energy flow, with tankers carrying significant percentages of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas transiting the strait each year. As Iran, a supporter of the Houthis, deploys warships to the region, there are concerns about potential escalation, especially if Iran decides to exert pressure on the Strait of Hormuz, another key transit route. Such actions could further disrupt global supply chains and lead to increased shipping costs and insurance premiums. In conclusion, the Red Sea crisis is already affecting consumers through potential price hikes, and the broader impact on global trade and energy flow could have lasting economic consequences. The situation underscores the need for a pre-evaluation of military strategies and procurement to address low-cost threats like drones and missiles, which are proving effective in the current maritime conflict. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
NFL coach Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots will part ways after 24 seasons.
Which delivered actually 6 Super Bowl titles, and it brings down the curtain on one of the most successful partnerships in American sports history. A loss to the New York Jets on Sunday saw the Patriots end the season with just 4 victories and 13 losses, which is the worst record of his tenure. The 71-year-old and Patriots owner Robert Kraft have been in discussions this week and have now come to a mutual agreement. Well, Belichick had 1 year remaining on his Patriots contract and will be allowed to leave without the franchisee seeking compensation. And the Patriots will now be on the lookout for a head coach for the first time in a quarter of a century. And while Belichick is also keen on continuing to coach in the NFL.
Belichick was appointed as Patriots head coach in 2000 before going on to steer the team into 6 wins in the 9 Super Bowl appearances. For the best part of 2 decades, Belichick and legendary quarterback Tom Brady spearheaded New England's iconic dynasty and went on to become the most prolific head coach-quarterback tandem in NFL history. However, since Brady's departure in 2019, the Patriots have struggled to maintain their dominance, returning a winning record in only one of the following 4 seasons. Brady, however, went on to win 1 more title with Tampa Bay Buccaneers before retiring.
And record 14-time champions Barcelona beat Osasuna to set up a Spanish Super Cup final with La Liga leaders Real Madrid.
Now, the Sunday showpiece clash will be a rematch from last year's final, which Barcelona had won 3-1. Xavi Hernandez's men were on top from the beginning and could have had the game in their bag in the first 20 minutes. But they came up against human wall in the shape of Osasuna goalkeeper Sergio Herrera. He kept out Andreas Christensen's volley from a corner. The first half opportunity it kept Roberto missed his kick from a golden position before Robert Lewandowski put another header over. Barcelona was back on the front foot in the second half. Lewandowski put Barcelona ahead in the 59th minute when he scored with a low shot after collecting Ilkay Gundogan's pass.
Now, this was his 11th goal of the season. Osasuna tried to make a late run for the equalizer but got exposed, and Joao Felix created a quick counter and assisted Yamal, who blasted low into the net to secure the win for Barcelona. And now let's take a quick look at the latest updates from the world of showbiz.
Jennifer Lopez has dropped the highly anticipated first single and music video, Can't Get Enough. It is from her upcoming 9th studio album, This Is Me Now. The album is Lopez's first major musical project in almost a decade. It is a follow-up to This Is Me Then, which released in 2002. The album will release on February 16th. Grammy-winning South African DJ and record producer Black Coffee is receiving medical care after being injured in a severe travel accident. He was on board an airplane while traveling to Argentina, where he was due to perform. According to a statement posted on social media, Black Coffee, whose real name is Kosinathi Innocent Mafumulo, is recovering well. Austin Butler and Barry Keoghan premiered their limited drama series Master of the Air in Los Angeles. The stars were joined by Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg, who both worked as executive producers of the show. The series is based on the historical book by Donald L. Miller and also stars Spielberg's son Sawyer Spielberg as well as Jude Law's son Raph Law.
Are you an Elvis Presley fan? If yes, this next story is for you.
Yes, hundreds of hip-shaking and wig-wearing Elvis Presley fans began their annual pilgrimage to the Elvis Festival in Australia. And more about this annual fest in our next report. Take a look.
What happens on the Elvis Express stays on the Elvis Express, you know. Look, it's really just a lot of fun. We go from carriage to carriage, entertaining the people. They dress up the carriages. They're all there to have a good time. And I guess that what makes it special is the people on the train make it special.
It's absolutely fantastic. It's great to celebrate the King. Everybody gets into the spirit of everything. We all get dressed up, and it's just become an annual tradition now. So yeah, absolutely love it.
Everyone's got so serious. The world, everyone's painting their house grey. The world's gone grey. We need a bit of colour and a bit of fun. And just, get out there and have a laugh, I say.
And with that, we call to wrap on this edition of World DNA.
There's a lot more coming on the other side, so stay tuned and thanks for watching WION World is One.
This week on Inside South Asia, a diplomatic row between Mali and New Delhi backfires on the Maldivian tourism sector, and the tale of two elections in the subcontinent. In Bangladesh, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina continues, and in Bhutan, the people pin hope on a new government. A look at some climate adaptation projects that aim to control the damage of deadly floods in the subcontinent. And can 12 Fail win the best film at the Oscars? All this and much more on Inside South Asia.
This week on the India story, after challenges with Pakistan, now strain in ties with neighboring Maldives, is it time for India to strengthen historic relations with UAE and the Gulf, forging new connections in the neighborhood?
India, which is seen as multicultural, stands out as a natural partner.
And Maldives is, perhaps might be seen as a small country, but has a big significance for India.
Don't miss an exclusive conversation with Swami Brahmavihari Das, the driving force behind the construction of the first Hindu temple in the UAE.
His Highness said that if you are making a temple, it should look like a temple.
Tune in to WION at these times. This week on West Asia Post, Israel goes to trial at International Court of Justice on charges of committing genocide in Gaza. Yemen's Houthis carry out the biggest Red Sea attack yet. In the backdrop of war, West Asia sees the resurgence of the Islamic State. Also on the show, we bring you the story of Gaza's journalists. This Friday, 5:30 p.m. IST, 12 noon GMT, only on WION. World is One.
iFinance, which provides funds to micro enterprises, which are the excluded segment in the country. I was brought up in a small town like Bhilai, which gave me the small town grounding. The difficult part is to convince yourself that yes, I can move from a salaried job, which I've done all my life, into something that is business on its own, etc. I know that if I put my head to it and I put my efforts behind it, there's a more than 50% chance of succeeding.
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to WION Health Resort. Make your reservation at wion.com.
Across the world, social media is aggravating the drug menace. Find out why Africa is one of the worst affected continents. Picturesque Umhlanga Rocks coastline in South Africa is harboring a deadly unseen enemy that's threatening lives and health. And South Africa's musical siblings are making a mark on the global stage. This week on World of Africa at these times.
As democracy strengthens across the world, elections and their unique cast of leaders, influencers, pollsters, and most of all voters dominate the political space. We bring you a special program that offers insights and reports on the colorful, contentious, and occasionally quirky panorama of elections. Something is always happening somewhere. This is a new special about leaders, their promises, voters and their demands. A show that tells you all about the rules of the race, cutting through the rhetoric to bring you the reality, cutting through the populism to bring out the policy at play. The show that keeps you updated on the twists and turns, the hits and the misses. Watch Race to Power on WION. World is One.
Across the world, social media is aggravating the drug menace. Find out why Africa is one of the worst affected continents. Picturesque Umhlanga Rocks coastline in South Africa is harboring a deadly unseen enemy that's threatening lives and health. And South Africa's musical siblings are making a mark on the global stage. This week on World of Africa at these times.
Welcome back to WION World is One. Thank you so much for staying with us. My name is Hem Kaur Suran. Here's a look at all the top stories that we're tracking at this hour. Former US President Donald Trump accuses New York judge of overseeing his civil fraud trial of bias and having a personal agenda. The United States and UK launched strikes against Yemen's Houthi rebels across the country, including capital Sana'a. Houthis termed the move American Zionist British aggression. Inspector General of the Pentagon says it will investigate handling of Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's secretive hospital visit last week. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu alleges hypocrisy and lies being presented to UN's top court, says South Africa's genocide accusation could only happen in a world turned upside down. UNSC confirms the death of UN-designated terrorist Hafiz Abdul Salam Bhutawi, responsible for training 2611 Mumbai attackers in Pakistan prison while serving terror financing sentences. The Israel-Hamas war is nearing 100 days and there have been crucial turns. Israel has been dragged to the International Court of Justice in a landmark case that accuses the Jewish nation of genocide. The hearing in the case, which has been filed by South Africa, will continue for the second day today. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has slammed South Africa's move, calling out its quote-unquote hypocrisy.
Olam afuch.
What a twisted world. And it is the IDF, the most moral army in the world, which does everything to avoid harming the uninvolved, that is accused by the representatives of the monsters of genocide. The hypocrisy of South Africa knows no bounds. Where was South Africa when millions of people were murdered and displaced from their homes in Syria and Yemen? And by whom? By the partners of Hamas. A twisted world. Where have you been?
Olam afuch,